Welcome everybody to our next screencast. Our topic is Hoover and the Depression and his role as president during this time period. Our learning outcomes: you should be able to understand why farms were better off than cities during the Depression. You should be able to identify the reasons why Hoover responded to the Depression the way he did. And lastly, summarize the bonus army's march on Washington. So the hardships in the cities. There are soup kitchens and bread lines where a lot of these guys are going to have to try and get food. Unemployment rates are higher for black people and Latino people simply because of the nativist idea of wanting to hire white people first. Farms, a positive is they can grow their own food. They are a little bit more self-sufficient than people that are living in the cities. The bad part is, the negative side, 400,000 farms are going to be foreclosed on between 1929 and 1932. People. Women are resented pretty heavily. A lot of men don't believe that women had the right to work, especially married women. Married women are looked at as seen by a lot of men thinking that their husband should be supporting them and the woman should not be out working, that they're taking jobs away from men. Children are going to have really bad diets at this point because they're just trying to find whatever food they can eat, and which is going to lead to a lot of health problems. Teenagers are going to ride the rails to try and find work. Some of these teenagers are going from coast to coast riding the rails, which is also very illegal to do. Adults, they're just trying to get by at this point. They stop going to the doctor, they stop going to the dentist. That preventative care is just not as important as trying to find a job and take care of their family. Part of the problem, which extends the Depression, is the Dust Bowl. You can see there in the center of the screen, it's a brown area going from about the center of Texas all the way up to North Dakota. This Central Plains area is extremely fertile in their soil. However, it's been overfarmed, overworked, and because of that, when a drought hits, it's just going to stir up all of the dust. The major part of the damage in the Dust Bowl right there is the darker brown part in the north of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. But it's going to extend up with the damage all the way up to North Dakota and then also all the way out to New Jersey. You can see there in New York City, 1934. Dust is reported on ships 500 miles out to sea. People from Oklahoma and Arkansas are going to make their way out to California. And if you've heard the term Okies or Arkies, they're going to be seen on the same level as African Americans and Mexican Americans in terms of trying to find jobs out in California. They're going to be heavily discriminated against. You can see here's what a picture of one of these dust storms look like. We're definitely not in Kansas anymore. Here's another picture of the results of one of these dust storms, 3 to 4 feet of dirt, basically destroying vehicles. You can see the buggy, you can barely even tell what it is there in the front. Here's another picture. Again, this is not something that you want to be out in. It could kill you. So Herbert Hoover, what he's going to try to do as president is reassure the nation that the economy is sound. He has a background in business and a background as an engineer. He thinks this is simply part of the business cycle, and we will get out of it soon enough. His philosophy on this whole thing is cooperation between the groups that are in conflict, and groups in conflict being business owners and their workers. He thinks that we should all work together to fix the issue. He also believes in rugged individualism, which means that men do not want a handout. Men should be working for their wage, and that's what a lot of men are doing at this point. They don't simply want unemployment. And he really has a heavy opposition to welfare or direct relief. He doesn't think that the government should be handing out anything to individuals. If they did need something, they should look to local charities or other local organizations. For us today, it would be like Salvation Army, Red Cross, anything like that. He also believes that the government should simply direct the relief measures and not be a primary go-between. His early actions. He's going to call business leaders together like I talked about, business leaders, banking leaders, and labor, and the whole idea is to work together with no cuts to wages or layoffs in exchange for no asking for higher wages or going out on strike, in hopes of riding the wave of this downturn in our economy until it gets better. Problem is, by 1930, our economy is still going down. If you remember back to the cause of the Depression screencast, that chart of the market crash, after 1930 is really when it starts to really hit rock bottom. He is going to authorize the building of the Boulder Dam. It is a dam along the Colorado River. It's a $700 million public works program. You're thinking, wait a minute, we're in a depression. How can we pay for $700 million? He is going to pay for this project out of the profits that it's going to produce, hydroelectric power. At this point, it's the world's tallest dam, 726 feet high, 1,244 feet long. And what it's going to do is help in flood control there in the Las Vegas area. create a regular water supply, and what it's going to do not just for Nevada, but enable a boom to the California agricultural economy in addition to helping the creation of a city called Las Vegas. You can see here Boulder Dam. Yes, it is known today as that Hoover Dam in the Lake Mead recreational area if you've ever been there. Here's another picture of the dam itself. So, by 1930, a lot of Americans are fed up with the Republicans. They're going to turn to the Democrats in the 1930 mid-year election, which is going to make Hoover's job even harder to try and do anything in terms of helping the population, because Republicans and Democrats don't get along. So they have the congressional majority. Farmers are going to burn crops and dump milk rather than sell it at a loss, and they're also going to block roads at this point. Things might have been different if Coolidge would have signed in that price support bill earlier. Shanty towns are going to develop called Hoovervilles. Hoover blankets are basically just simply newspapers that people are sleeping under because they don't have blankets. Hoover flags are people walking around with their pockets hanging out in protest of Hoover and his presidency and the fact that they have no job and no money. He is seen as cold and heartless because he does not believe in direct relief. There's also a newspaper story that gets published that Hoover and his wife are holed up in the White House, Hoover wearing a tuxedo, his wife wearing ball gowns every night, eating 7-course meals, while the vast majority of our population, 13 million people, are unemployed. It doesn't go over very well. And people at this point don't care if it's real or fake. They believe it, and this is part of what's going to cause his ousting in the 1932 election. Here's a picture of one of those shanty towns or Hoovervilles. Here's another picture. Again, these dwellings are not very big, probably 10 by 10, 12 by 12 at the tops, and it's just a place to get out of the weather. Here's another picture of a different angle of that Hooverville. Here's a picture of a couple of kids trying to help their family out. At this point, anybody would try to get work. Hard times are still hoovering over us. Here's another political cartoon, Blame It on Hoover. I really think, Hoover gets a lot of the blame here, but I think part of it needs to go to Calvin Coolidge as well for not seeing this or not helping out these farmers beforehand after World War I when their income is going down by so much, $6 billion. Now, Hoover's actions, in my opinion, it's too little too late. He backs cooperatives like the Boulder Dam, but it's just not enough. The Federal Farm Board is going to help by raising the prices and keeping crops temporarily off the market. Again, supply and demand, trying to regulate that. The National Credit Corporation is going to give banks loans to avoid bankruptcy. The Federal Home Loan Bank Act is also going to help in that department. They're going to allow people to refinance their loans, lower their payments for not just homeowners but farmers as well. Because one of the biggest things is if people can keep their houses, people will still have hope because it's one of the things that people hold most dear to them. And if they can, despite not having a job, still have a place to go to that they can call their own, that's going to go a long way for a lot of people. The last big thing is the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, or RFC. It's $2 billion in emergency financing for banks, life insurance companies, railroads, and other large businesses. This is almost like what happened a few years ago with the bailout of GM. Okay, this is not a new concept. To try and keep these companies in business, because if they failed, think about how many more people would be unemployed. $805 million in the first 5 months. The whole idea was that the money was going to trickle down from business owners to the individuals in the sense of jobs and that kind of stuff. But anything else like trickle-down economics, it doesn't work like it's supposed to. Very little of this money ends up in the individuals. Very few jobs are going to be created. And ultimately, Hoover, this is another thing that is going to cause Hoover to face a lot of flack in the election that's going to be coming up. Now, the bonus army. World War I veterans are going to march on Washington in 1932. They want their compensation for the service from World War I. In 1924, the Patman Bill was passed to pay their benefits in 1945. It was about $500 a soldier and their life insurance policy. But by 1932, as we are firmly in this depression, these veterans want it now. They don't want to wait until 1945. Hoover ends up seeing these people as communists. He believes that they are asking for money at the absolute worst time for the country and that they should be American and work together. Hoover, one of the nails in his coffin, is going to authorize the gassing of 1,000 people during the disbanding of this bonus army. In addition, an 11-month-old baby is going to be killed in this gassing. And we're not talking about gassing like we think of World War II gassing, but using gas to try to disband this army. Public is going to be extremely shocked and appalled at Hoover's actions, and again, this is one of the major last straws for the American people to vote Hoover out of the presidency in 1932. You can see here's a stamp, pay the bonus army. They set up makeshift tents just like the Occupy movement that we've seen in New York and LA and other places. They're sleeping right out on the grass of the Capitol building. And here's a picture of them actually fighting with local police and the attempted disband to the bonus army. So let's recap. You should be able to understand why farmers were better off than cities during the Depression. Quite simply, a lot of them were self-sufficient. They could grow their own food, so they don't even have to worry about that like people in the city did. You should be able to identify the reasons why Hoover responded to the Depression the way he did. His engineering background, his business background, he thought that this was just simply a downturn in the economy, and that if we ride the wave long enough, the economy will return to normal. And lastly, summarize the bonus army's march on Washington. They go there looking for that bonus from World War I for their service. It's not supposed to be paid until 1945, but they need the money in 1932. Hoover ends up authorizing the gassing of these soldiers, these veterans, and ultimately an 11-month-old baby is going to die, which all of these things are going to lead to Hoover being ousted in the 1932 presidential election. So if you have any questions, let me know. Send me an email. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.